you for having me, Texas State. I feel like the odd man out here among your faculty presenting in this track, but we'll do the best we can. So my name is Jason Morningstar. I'm a game designer for Bully Pulpit Games, and I've worked in partnership with the University of North Carolina, University of Michigan, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Michigan, Kaiser Permanente, the Innovation Learning Network, and some other groups in specifically the medical education area. Now, what I'm talking about here is making low-tech games. And my main point is that you can and should be taking opportunities to create engaging low-tech games, exercises, and simulations, and your students will thank you. You're probably doing this to some extent, but I just want to show you some examples and explain sort of my approach. I'm not talking about theory or assessment or outcomes or anything that's going to cost you more than $10. So, right? Okay. Good deal. Okay, so these are my key points. The small analog games are really easy to instantiate, which means you can create them and modify them very rapidly. They got a useful place in your pedagogy, and you can make your own. And here's an example of that, and I'll talk about this game a little later. So, fast, cheap, or good. Choose any three. That's my motto. Iterative low-cost analog simulation. That's the name of the talk. Let's break those terms down a little bit. So simulation means a structured activity, right, that's designed to emulate something real. Analog means non-digital, which is a really important distinction to make. I'm not talking about computers, I'm talking about index cards and Sharpies, which is an important distinction because often in this space people automatically assume digital. But because it's going to be analog, it's also going to be low cost, and it's going to be easy to change, to adapt, to modify based on feedback. You can iterate rapidly. So in thinking about this, I kind of envision a fidelity to friction ratio, right? So unless you're doing the actual thing, high fidelity tends to mean high friction. And by friction, I mean expense, complexity, just difficulty in presenting the material. So computer simulations, for example, very high fidelity, or they can be, but they're often high friction as well. Analog games are low fidelity, usually, almost always, but they're also low friction, so they can be the right tool for the job. And simulation can happen at any place on that chart, right? So you're actually doing the thing. The fidelity is as high as it can possibly be. You are creating a computer simulation. Maybe the fidelity is going to be high, but the friction is also going to be pretty high. The stuff that I'm talking about is way down here. There are spaces where fidelity is not as important, and friction is going to be down there at the bottom as well. So this isn't good for everything. Index cards and Sharpies are not going to be a replacement for a patient simulator, but there's space for lots of different ways to approach this. So let me give you an example of something that I did with our nursing students at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So I had a faculty member approach me and say, I've got a real problem. My students aren't retaining information based on the orientation that I give them. So they have to do a pediatric rotation. They're going to be on 5 children's, which is our sort of critically ill children's floor. And as soon as they come in contact with these children, they forget all the stuff that I oriented them about because they're stressed, there's some anxiety there, and these are young people who are probably on their first pediatric exposure. So she said, I need to fix this. What I've been doing is spending an hour orienting them on all the things they need to know. They need to know where the Pyxis machine is and what the code of the Pyxis machine is. They need to know where to get a bedpan. They need to know what to do if they need to interact with a celebrity, or all the things you need to know that as a nursing student on your rotation you'd have to understand. And they just forget it all the minute they come in contact. So with the buy-in of the faculty and staff on the ward, I turned that orientation into a sort of an exercise. So what we did is we turned basically into a treasure hunt, right? The students were put into dyads, they were given tasks, they weren't given any instruction about how to accomplish those tasks, and they were allowed to do it in any way they wanted, but the whole experience was structured as a game with a winner. And these students are pretty highly motivated, they're competitive, they understand the idea of a game, and they were very excited at that point. So excited that they forgot that they were surrounded by critically ill children, which is great. That was one of the design goals of the exercise. So with the help of the subject matter expert, all the tasks were put into a format that allowed us to distribute them rapidly and easily. Basically, all these tasks were on index cards. We gave them to them and sent them out onto the ward. Now, these things were, they had to navigate the physical space, they had to navigate the social space, they had to navigate the procedural space, demonstrating knowledge, reinforcing the necessary skills, and demonstrating that they had the information that they were going to need to function. And so that was the purpose of the game. And we wanted them to be really focused on this, and so making competitive helped in two ways. It increased engagement because they were focused on beating their peers, which is something they were really interested in, and also it meant that they completely lost anxiety over the environment, which was quantifiable. It was easy for the instructor to say the way that they're behaving and interacting in this environment is very different from previous rotations, which was good. Oh, and the thing that as a game designer I was delighted to see, of course the students were focused, but they're also focused, which means that they cheated. And I was so glad to see that. I think that as a benchmark for engagement, cheating is magnificent. So the stakes are low, right? If they're going to bend the rules or break the rules of this exercise, it's not going to harm anything, and it definitely shows that they're highly engaged. So I was really happy about that. So that was the 5 children's game, and that's been used several times with success. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the ways that you can implement this sort of thing too. You can see how dirt simple that was. It was just recontextualizing and refactoring an existing sort of piece of the curriculum in a way that made it more effective. So we picked a problem in that case that had a low fidelity, low friction solution. If you needed higher fidelity, it was not the place for it. And the frameworks that are out there in the literature for this sort of thing are pretty consistent. So from my point of view as a game designer, I would encourage you to think quick and dirty about this. You want to be iterating rapidly, which means that you don't need to worry about the way that your materials are formatted necessarily. Again, index cards and Sharpies. You want to think about the affordances of these materials, though, for your audience, right? Like, how are they going to be using them? What kinds of things are going to be important for your audience? Their cognitive ability, obviously, but also their ability to interact with these materials in a tactile way, mobility, their learning styles, their ability to absorb these concepts, and inclusivity. So you want to be thoughtful about these factors as well. And also include humor, right? These are low stakes, low fidelity exercises. One of the things that we did in the 5 children's game, because children's wards are often visited by celebrities, one of the things that they had to do was virtually escort Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson around. So there was a card with The Rock's face on it, and they had to take him from point A to point B, and in the process learn both those locations, and also get a sort of a tangible reminder that that's something that might happen, and it might be weird, and they need to adapt to that. So lighten up a little. For these kinds of, there's The Rock. I forgot I put this picture there. He's a beautiful man, right? So again, cheating as a benchmark of engagement, iteration. This stuff is, it's essentially throwaway materials. You can create a new card on the fly if it's not working for students. And then, of course, you really want your users to give you direct feedback. So I'm not as interested in what, in this case, the faculty member had to say as much as the students who had to engage in the activity. The other group that was very important, though, in this particular case, and probably in all cases, are the people who had to agree to allow these knuckleheads to be in their ward, right? So we had to get buy-in from the nurses that were actively on 5 Children's doing their jobs, knowing that they were going to be interrupted and perhaps disrupted by this exercise. And they grudgingly allowed us to do it. And after the first time, they were much more supportive because they saw that the nursing students beginning their rotation were much better prepared. So it got easier over time. But those people were very important, and soliciting feedback from them was important too, because we incorporated them into the exercise. One of the cards was go find the shift manager or somebody on staff who can give you this piece of information. And then we asked that person to be ready for a bunch of nursing students to come with index cards and ask them some piece of information that they would. There's a bibliography here and a ludography about these games. The one that I didn't mention earlier was the patient discharge game at the University of Michigan, which is interesting and noteworthy because they basically reskinned a commercial game. Again, talking about quick and dirty, maybe the technology is already there for the activity that you want to support. In their case, they were making a game about a patient discharge, so they needed something that had sequential steps in it, and they chose Hanabi, which is a very popular game, and they reskinned it, and they got it in front of the stakeholders very quickly, and that worked great. So thank you very much.